Hello, I'm going to be doing a YouTube that I didn't think the day is going to come for me to do this. Bear with me, I'm not an actor. I'm going to try, I wrote all the notes just now, my hands are shaking. I'm going to try to get off my chest some stress that I have had that does not relate whatsoever to my current situation. No, it's not affecting my current lawsuit. No, it's not. This is a YouTube that I want to share and get off my chest. And thank God we have the technology that we can do this. There has been incidents that I have kept in my heart and soul for 6 years and a couple of months maybe. It's going to be a long YouTube, so I am sorry, but it'll sure be an informative one as a demonstration to show you what some families go through when a power of attorney is selected or forced on, and what the other family members experience, depending on how cruel and abusive the power of attorney can be. Anyway, I'm sorry. I will be crying. It's very hard for me to go back and open up what you will hear. And on top of everything I tell you today, add WEttlaufer murdering my father. Please add that on to what you're going to hear, and then make your conclusion as to how much stress and post-traumatic stress I have from this whole thing. And then I'm lucky every single day that I can somewhat function. Anyway, here we go. Get ready for this one. Okay. What I'm going to say is factual. What I'm going to say, I have to read my notes, I'm sorry, are not allegations. They are factual. They are truth. Because I also had an intuition when all of this was going on to document everything that was going on and record certain things and tape certain things so that I don't think I'm going crazy. I just hope I don't faint right now because I'm getting really weird, lightheaded. It's not easy. I'll just try my best and try to stay cool and calm and say this. I may not. I may have to shut this off. I don't know. I feel like I'm getting a panic attack. I really do, but I'll give it a try. Okay. Back in 2013, in November, my father was he was an owner of a business called Central Tool and Die. A tool and die company. It was located on Bridges Street in London here. And my dad ended up having dementia, big time. He had a incompetent doctor at the time, young doctor that loaded my dad up with every kind of pill you can think of. Anyway, through the course of my dad's dementia, and because my brother was working in the company and very close to my father, I was a more independent child. I went ahead in the world and did my own thing, started my own business, that kind of deal. What ended up happening was, Dad got dementia, so my brother, somehow, I know how, I'm sure he coerced my dad, considering the condition my father was in, but those two were always somewhat closer than me and Dad. But my brother was always a monetary person, materialistic person. So the will and the paperwork ended up to the point we had to get a competency doctor because my father's will was with the bank. And that bank was his trustee and everything. So my brother ended up getting a competency doctor. I'm just taking my slippers off here because I'm getting really hot. And the competency doctor evaluated my father's condition and wrote down that my father was in no frame of mind to write a will or any documents. He was out of it. He was hallucinating. The stuff he said during that time, you have no idea what I've heard. And that's because he was all drugged up. He had lots of pills going on. And on top of it, he had alcohol. He would be drinking. Regardless, the competency doctor's advice was overruled by my brother and the lawyer. Apparently so, because the way the documents have it, and I had another lawyer look at it, it does say that it can be challenged. So with that said and done, we now have not one will, we have 3 wills, which is very conspicuous. 3 wills were done in a period of no time when my father was not competent. When it came time to talk to the competency doctor regarding my dad's finances and everything, he couldn't. It was my brother, and of course his wife was involved, and they would be explaining my father's finances to the competency doctor, of which everything is documented. You understand? I'm not making this up. Regardless what anybody's going to say or do or put another YouTube on against me, I really don't care. Okay, I'm just glad to get this shit off my chest. So anyhow, that was done. Documents are finished. During the time that all happened, my father got worse and locked himself in his office. Like, my brother was the power of attorney, so he locked Dad in his office. So he would be staying there. It was, I think, a month or so. Dad would be months, maybe even, was in his shop. He stayed in his office. It was disgusting in his office. It was very unclean, hygienically really, really bad. My father's secretary was still there at the time, but then she basically quit or left. I don't know the scenario there. It was quite fast. Shortly thereafter, brother took over everything. And lo and behold, there were times where I wanted to see my father. My brother would not allow me. My brother clearly stated, I am the power, meaning the power of attorney. So eventually on Dad's birthday, I think I seen him in November 2013, for his birthday, and his condition deteriorated in that office. Like, he was really dementia stricken, lost a ton of weight. Then shortly after that, his sister from Windsor and her husband went to visit my father. And I noticed that my brother was giving my dad alcohol. And I know he's the power of attorney. So let's just say that this is documented in another format. And I asked my brother, why are you giving Dad booze? And he said, because the doctor said it's okay. So after the visit with my aunt and uncle and everything, I left and called the doctor. And I said, did you give any instructions that it's okay for my father to have alcohol on his medication? And the doctor said, no. No, I did not. Why would I say that? So that right there put something in my mind. While my father was in the shop or office, and at the time when the sister and brother-in-law of his and my aunt were going to visit him, we called up my father on the phone to open the door so we can come in and come down and unlock the door. My brother was nowhere to be found. He's not there. Not there. And he came down and, or Dad tried to come down, but he fell. There was a big clunk in the building. I had no key to get in. Everybody was worried, so the only thing I did was call the London police because nobody was with this sick, ill man who should have had medical care. But under the power of attorney, I guess it's okay to suffer like that in his office and fall and have how many strokes alone. My brother would go into my father and see him during the day, but about 3:30 he had to leave to pick up his wife from work. So my father was mostly left alone at nighttime, which is the most worst. My brother would be bringing him some food, food they'd cook, I guess, or they had the stove. So I'm sure Dad was being fed. I'm sure he was being fed. So anyway, I just have to look at this as a hell of a situation here. During the time that my brother was with my dad, our company, Central Tool and Die, the family business, was unoperational. It wasn't operating for about 5-6 years. There was just no work. My dad was getting sicker and he couldn't operate the business. So my brother was on unemployment, obviously, because he was unemployed. And also, he was collecting Dad's pension, because I guess they had a discussion where he needed income because he was not working, and he had a family and wife that he had to pay bills for. And it seemed to me like he was under the gun to get those finances. So he was collecting unemployment for however long that goes. And then Dad was also giving him his pension, I guess, for whatever. And brother was also writing out a wage out of a company that was inoperational. I personally think that's ridiculous. I think that might even be against the law. I'm not sure. Because the lawyer found out, the one that I hired, because I had to hire a lawyer to look into this situation because it was stinking pretty bad with lies and deceit, just thick. So it turns out that, he was collecting those incomes. Then it even got worse to the point where my father had a letter drawn up about how horrible I am, how I'm after his money and house and everything. Blows my mind because in my business I was making extremely good money, very independent. I've already owned 8 or 9 houses. So with that said, I was not after my father's money. I was not after my father's house or anything like that. I'm from the city. I can't even live out in the country. I freak out. So the letter was very cruel, very hurtful, and it was all full of lies. It was not about anything true, which I have that letter. It's totally wrong. So I felt that was also strange how it was set up against me because my father was not well. He was already told by a competency doctor, he's out. There's too much dementia. So eventually my dad ended up having, a really bad stroke, really bad one. Ambulance took him away. Next thing you know, the next chapter of this is we're in Victoria Hospital in London. So we get to the hospital. Everybody's stressed out. Dad's there now. He's a patient. I think Dad was in there for 3 months, I swear. 3 or 4 months. It was a long stay. He was very ill. The doctor said very ill. The minute my father went in there, however, he also had a wife and a daughter who was very worried about him and his health and everything. And it turns out that my brother, the power of attorney, as he put it, the power, he's the power, and his wife, who's side by side in all of this. So every time I mention my brother plus the wife, I just can't mention it all the time because I'm stressed as it is. Anyhow, my brother had told the doctors and informed them not to give out any information about my father to myself or to my mom. Nothing. You have no idea what it's like to be a daughter of your parent, and you're going in and out of the hospital and you don't know a thing about them. And they're told to be secretive, and I'm his daughter. On top of that horrible situation, abuse, I would call it, I noticed that my dad's cell phone would never have my phone number in it. It was a little flip phone that he was given. My phone number was always taken out, and I would always put it in, and it was taken out, and I always put it in. Because my power of attorney, my brother, or his wife, they're one and the same, removed my phone number to the point I had to key it into the phone. And I had to put in the phone that I know what you are doing. Do not remove my name. And he had a picture of himself on the cell phone, him and him only. So you can see how bad it's getting with me and my mom, how we've been treated by the power of attorney. Hardly any information. This is all true. I'm not making one thing up. Take my word. And I can prove it. So anyway, that also took place. I forgot to add that when my father was in the office and he locked himself in with the dementia, my brother did end up talking my father into buying a brand new, I believe it was 2013 Hyundai Tucson car, about 30 grand. It was paid full, brand new. Dad couldn't drive, so Dad couldn't drive, but the information I received from my brother at the time was that the car is low enough for Dad that he can sit in. He won't have to jump into his pickup truck for me to take him to the hospital. Okay, I get it, low enough. I also get it that maybe we're buying a new car for ourselves because as the senior citizen passes on or he's sick, you will now have a new car, that kind of thing. Yeah. So anyway, that ended up happening too, amongst certain furniture that was purchased. My dad purchased a bed and things like that in his office to be more comfortable. I get it, comfortable. New bed, everything. Goes to the family and power of attorney and family. Now also one thing I didn't mention as well is my brother and wife stopped me from seeing my nieces and nephews. They did not allow me since the time Dad was locked in his office for me to see my nieces and nephews. One day I'm playing checkers with my nephew, and the next day I don't see any of them. His excuse was that because I told his son that Daddy's kind of not acting normal. That is what their line was. My intuition, again, because I just follow it, says that when children are young, they talk a lot, they're very honest, they say what they see. And because I was under the impression that my brother and his wife possibly were, I don't know, trying to move things along for their own benefit from my dad's money and all his assets, that it would not be a good idea to have those kids talk to me, Auntie, and tell me things. Because my brother and his wife are well aware that I'm not putting up with bullshit and that I would absolutely go after them. period. So, yeah, it would be a good idea not to have the nieces and nephews talk to Auntie. Okay, moving along. So while my father, while my father was in the shop before he went to the hospital, or was it after or in between? Yeah, because we had to try to find where he was going to stay, because he can't stay in the hospital. My brother, my mom told me this. It is recorded. I have it. I mean, it's in a safe place. And 2 people know where everything is in case I don't show up. Nevertheless, it turns out that my brother talked with my dad when my dad couldn't think straight. And him and his wife tried to basically pay out my mother out of the family home. Kick her out, in other words, but let's make it nice. Remove her from the home, pay her out, so that my brother and his wife and family could move in. And we had a very huge, major, big estate. Okay, pool, swimming pool, sauna, big property, that kind of deal. And my brother and wife, yes, and they wanted to pay out, or dad was talked into paying my mom out so that she would get out of the picture and they would move into the house and everything. Yes, true story. True story. So meanwhile, here I am documenting everything going on. Date, time, you name it. Because I could see this picture just growing. Anyhow, moving along, my mom didn't go ahead with it. She was very hurt and insulted and didn't go ahead with it. Okay, back to the hospital. While we were in the hospital, my father was a diabetic too. There's certain foods he's not allowed to have, period. End of story. It affects his health. My brother and his wife, when I'd go in to see dad, whenever that was, because I was very rarely allowed, everything had to be by permission. You don't even know what I've been through. The brother and wife, I seen they were feeding dad pizza, chocolate, anything you can imagine that's junk. And I always was bringing in dad food from the deli, protein, good fruits and vegetables. And I just noticed, I said, like, in my mind, I said, what do they want to do? Kill him? Like, they want him to drop dead? Like, what are they doing? And what ended up happening, ladies and gentlemen, is the doctor had to come in and actually talk to my brother and his wife, telling them not to bring in any more food. I was also told to limit the food that I was bringing in, but my food was nowhere near what they were feeding my father. Werther's, chocolates, pizza. You don't know. There was a day my dad had such a insulin shock. I watched him drooling. Okay. And then eventually I thought I would confront my brother and tell my brother that I think I know what's going on. And my brother told me to fuck off and basically told me that you can't do anything because you don't have any money to do anything about it, to me. And I did have money, actually. I was running my business. I did have money. Anyway, and then he mentioned he was putting in a hot tub in the farm and all that kind of stuff, because my dad owned a farm and he was living there, not paying rent, as a handyman. And so, yeah, utilities, working on the farm property. I give him that. He was a hard worker on the farm and all that. So, continuing on with this horror film that's starting in my mind now. While Dad was in the hospital, I tried to put out family pictures so he could see family pictures. And every single time I did, the pictures were turned down. They were of his sister's child, our cousin, me, mom, a couple of others, grandma, grandpa, his parents. My brother removed those and said, no pictures. I don't want Dad to cry. No pictures. Okay. So, no pictures. And when he would go in with my father, he wouldn't connect with Dad. He would just sit there, read a book, watch some TV with Dad, talk a little bit, and leave. I would read to my father. I was very concerned about him. You have no idea. Anyway, moving on. There's a lot here. So, as I said, yeah, Victoria Hospital was instructed not to give any information. So when I would call for my father and everything to see how he's doing or what have you, the bottom line was I would get from nurses, he had a bad day. He had a good day. He had a bad day. He had a good day. That's all I got. That's all his daughter got and his wife. Okay, going on. It got to a point where we had to have a family meeting in Victoria Hospital because it got to a stage where we had to remove Dad out of the hospital. He can't stay there forever. He has to go into a nursing home. He has to go to his house. He's got to do something. And we were supposed to have a family meeting. And what ended up happening was my dad's sister came down from Windsor, and those meetings are to determine what to do with the senior. So we were all there. We were told it was, I think, 11 o'clock or something in a certain room. We were in the hospital, and then my mom tried to call my brother, power of attorney, and no answer, phone down. No answer, shut off. So there was no answer. Now we don't know what's going on. We are on time. Nobody's in the room we're supposed to be in to discuss the family affairs as a family. So I got a little bit sniffing my intuition again, and I figured, yeah, he's here. He's just lying. They are lying. And what ended up happening, I got lucky. A guy down the hallway, I said, where's this, my brother? I said the name and what have you. And he said, oh, yeah, no, they're in this room here. My computer keeps blacking out, but it's got power, so I don't get it. Anyway, so we went into the room where the family meeting was CCAC at the time. There they were, sitting at the table, all of them. Sister-in-law at the front of the helm, brother beside her not saying a word, and she's running the show. And apparently they are both power of attorneys, or I don't know what even happened there. But my brother was not saying too much of nothing, and the wife was running the show regarding my father's health and my father. So my mom kind of was confused, and I had told my mom that they lied. Obviously, they don't want us here. So, and then my brother said, well, we don't need any arguments. I thought, oh boy, we haven't even started arguing. We aren't even told anything. We are kicked out of this picture. Why would we argue? The sister came all the way from Windsor. Like, why is this happening? So anyway, in a nutshell, what ended up happening, my mom had told my sister-in-law when it came time to decide where we're going to put Dad. And my mom said, I would like my husband with me in my house, and I can call in nurses or whatever. And my sister-in-law looked at my mom and said, no. And my mom's sitting there, as fragile as she is, married to this man and took his crap for 50 years as a loyal, loving Christian wife. And she got talked to like that. And then they said they were going to take my dad to the farm where those two live. because now, you know, they're married, wife is there too with the kids. So, yeah, sure. My mom said, no, I don't want him to go to the farm. And that's when the sister-in-law basically barreled into my mom's face and said, well, he's not going with you. So that was a shocker. And my mom said at that time, I have to get a lawyer. I have to get a lawyer. And that's when I had my chance to billow out something and tell my mom, take a good look at your son and your wife. Because this is who they are. Anyway, moving on. That happened. We're out of the hospital. Dad would still stay for about another, I don't know, a couple weeks. Then my brother created a doctor's meeting. Yes, doctors in Victoria Hospital and the staff that were around my father while we were visiting or whatever, just the surrounding staff. So there was a meeting, can you imagine? So here I am in my business suit coming in from working, and my brother's sitting there telling everybody that he wanted me banned out of the hospital. Do you understand this, ladies and gentlemen? Listen again. My brother, the power, wanted me banned from seeing my dad. The doctor, I recorded this meeting. I did. You bet I did, for my recollection. I've got it. Not on me, but I've got it somewhere where people know. And the doctors said, we can't ban your sister. She's done nothing wrong. Nothing. So it got to a point where they had to develop a strategic plan where when I would go in to see my father, my brother wouldn't be there, and vice versa. It was disgusting. And then they'd have to ask my dad if he wanted to see me, but my dad's frame of mind was like totally loopy from all the more drugs that he was put on in the hospital, plus his dementia and illness. So, and on top of that, he had to decide with his mind whether or not he was going to see his daughter. Anyway, it came down to a stage where the geriatric doctor in Victoria Hospital said to my brother, because my brother had it in his head to remove my father. My dad was super sick and wanted to remove my father to take him to the farm and have him there for the rest of his days and to be cared for over there on the farm. Not the matrimonial home with my mother's living there all alone. My brother decided on the farm where him and his wife were living. I automatically heard that, and I am not saying anything, but I heard that and I went, oh boy. And that's when my brother actually turned around and removed my dad. And the geriatric doctor, I pleaded with my brother. He didn't listen. Again, I was told to fuck off. So the geriatric doctor, I talked with him. Everything, I'm not going to say it again. I've got everything recorded, documented, name, number, time. And he told me, he said, Susan, you've tried everything for your dad. You've tried everything. I've tried everything, but he's obviously taking your father out. So Dad ended up, in a nutshell, at the farm for an hour, 2, tops. CCAC was coming out, everything, nurses, what have you. My dad wanted to get out of there. He went into a complete hysteria, total rampage, because, of course, ladies and gentlemen, all his drugs were removed, so he was in a withdrawal. Plus, he's a diabetic. Okay, the power of attorney just doesn't think and put my dad's life in jeopardy and his health. You goddamn right. Anyway, my dad ended up calling me. I was working with my customers, you know, staying away from everybody I'm not allowed to be near, from the rules of the power. And my dad called me, and I dropped my clients. I had my friend babysit my dog, and I buzzed over to my parents' matrimonial home because Dad ended up being taken there by my brother, and my brother was driving the brand new car that my dad bought. How nice. My dad was going into an insulin shock, which is when you're a hypoglycemic. It was very, very, very dangerous situation. My brother knew it, though, because he told my mom to get some food for Dad because Dad's sugar's dropping. So the police were there. The ambulance was there. It was a embarrassing situation beyond belief. I couldn't say anything to my brother or raise my voice because then I was in trouble by the police, because then that would make me sound like I'm a violent person. So I took my father, because my father called me help, help, and I took him into my van because he only trusted me. And he told me, he said he wanted to go to my place, but he was really losing it with the medication withdrawal. So I drove him back to the hospital because now he has to get back onto all those drugs that caused this reaction to begin with, and he should be taken care of. So when we got there, it was more embarrassing because we have now a sick man who needs help, who is shaking in the van because nobody would take him out of the van. The ambulance were there, and I said, well, you're going to have to remove my father out of the van. I can't lift him. And they just stood there. We're not allowed to touch him due to these laws and those laws. And he's in distress. He's a hypoglycemic. He's a hypoglycemic. He needs help, and these idiots wouldn't touch him or help him for the longest time. Then they had to call their security from the hospital. How stupid. And then eventually I raised my voice, and they said, well, then I'll be responsible if something happens, or if you know, they could be abused by an old man who's very sick and paralyzed on the left side. That could be abuse, you know. I'm embarrassed to be in this province. Nevertheless, getting on with it. So eventually, they took him out of the ambulance, and they strapped him down like an animal on a gurney. And he was getting more violent, more crazy, because he needed the proper glucagon. They didn't give it to him. He needed food. They didn't give it to him. No. They strapped him down like an animal for days. He went crazy, neurologically crazy. Very nice. I applaud that kind of medical care. Thank you. I'm glad we have that care. Yeah. Then the power of attorney rushed behind me. He got there in the nick of time when all this was going on. Like, you know, and I basically belted out to him what a loser he was as a power of attorney. And, you know, I left. So what ended up happening is I went to a lawyer right off the bat, and I basically had to talk to a lawyer. She looked through everything. She seen through my brother what was going on. She seen that, you know, through the wills that apparently popped up, 3 of them, that I and my mother were being somewhat screwed over. Okay, and that everything was more sided toward him, his wife, his family, whatever. Okay, so no surprise there. Every time my lawyer would ask to have documents handed in, his lawyer would be on a holiday, or we'll get to it when we can, or he'd send the wrong documents. Imagine that. I ended up running out of money. I couldn't pay this lawyer. It was expensive. I was working. I ran out of money. We're talking thousands of dollars. I ran out of money. So what I ended up doing is basically trying to get to the court so that I could sign application to be guardian of my father, because I could see he was being mistreated huge. Anyway, it turns out that very suddenly my father ended up in Meadowpark from the hospital. So we're back in the hospital. They get him stabilized and balanced and drugged up all over again. And then I think within days, weeks, he was in Meadowpark, transferred to Meadowpark by ambulance. Again, the staff was instructed in Meadowpark not to tell me anything. Nothing. Instructions of the power of attorney. This time my father had no cell phone. He was unable to use it at that time. I had left stuffed animals and little gifts for my dad. I found them in the closet when I'd see him again. That was not Meadowpark doing that part with the animals, and that was my brother and his wife possibly. On Christmas Eve, it was me and my dad's senior friend that were with him. There was no power of attorney with him. We took photos. There's nobody there. Me and my dad's friend, senior. My dad was hallucinating a lot of times in Meadowpark. I'd be there. I'd come see him. My brother was at that point wrapping up the company as it was being sold. And plus he had to pick up his wife from work. She doesn't drive. Plus they went on a cruise while Dad was in the Meadowpark. And plus. So it got to a stage where my brother was in there only for a couple of hours. And he'd leave. Sometimes he wouldn't show up for a couple of days. The truth. True story. Yes. Anyway. And then when I'd go in to see, when I would go in to see my father at Meadowpark, as I said, the nurses would flag diapers at me that he was clean when he wasn't. Feces under the fingernails, bruises. He wasn't even shaven. My brother didn't even as much, I guess, have time because he's telling the whole world he's been there every single day and all that. He had no time to even shave his father. My dad looked disgusting. I mean, he wasn't showered, clean, nothing. Okay? You know, when you land some money and you get into money and everything, and I mean, anyway, whatever. So, Dad was in there, yes. Then he ended up in the hospital, in Victoria Hospital, on a gurney, in a coma. And then the minute I went into the hospital, I looked at Dad and I seen that somebody put him here. I think he was in the hospital for a period of 5 days, 6 days in Vic. That was it. And then my brother or his wife, whichever, pulled the life machine plug on my dad. That was the end of that. So again, my mind just, whirling around in my head with what I'm seeing, recording, and da-da-da. So, when my father passed, in his obituary, the power of attorney, not as much as put his photo. Matter of fact, not even his photo. So, anyway, and there was a lot of money to go around for a photo for his father, since his father gave him everything, and he was a golden boy, and he was given everything, bought everything, treated really, really good. Most kids will never have the life that brother of mine had. Nevertheless, no photo in Dad's obituary. I had to place it in online on the obituary website. After my dad passed, I immediately went to the courthouse. Immediately. To put a stop payment on the will. Because I knew with what I'm seeing, what I'm writing, what I'm following, that he wasn't going to pay me out money. Because my dad did leave me some money. Okay? In the will. Not millions or anything like that, but money for me. He did. I can't get into it, but anyway, he did. So I knew that my brother was not going to pay me, so I did the smart thing, and I put a stop on the payment right away on the will, everything. Then I had to hire a lawyer, And the only way this was going to work is if my brother would hand over the money with his lawyer, who I have no respect for. Anyway, while that was going on, I had to call the credit card company because my brother was still using my dad's credit cards. Because my brother would be signing my dad's credit cards because my brother and my dad have the same name. So I knew that that was going to go on as long as it could. And I thought that was illegal or not fair. So I called to stop the credit card. I also made a custom-made movie for my dad's funeral. Took pictures and everything, made a custom movie. And just before the funeral, I dropped off the DVD. They had the screen TV ready. Well, the power that be, my brother, noticed that DVD, watched that DVD, and immediately had one duplicated with a little bit of different duplication in it, photos, what have you, immediately. So at the funeral, there were actually two screen TVs going. You can imagine that. You can't imagine that. Then when my father was in the casket, I had put a Hungarian doll in beside him, and it was in the casket regardless. And I was standing by the casket most of the time, and the whole funeral room was weird because the wife's family and friends were all on one side, and me and Mom and our friends were on the other. And of course, you know, my brother would be on that side. So it was a really weird setup. I've never seen something like that before. But anyway, we'll get into why that was, I'm sure. And then I just noticed what hurt my feelings, because I was at the front row anyway on the bench. And I noticed that people would be coming up. Dad was a businessman. A lot of people knew him. And one man came up and said that, you know, it's a nice farm out there in Dorchester, and I think he was interested in purchasing it or whatever, you know, like he just kind of asked. And all this kind of conversation's going on. My dad is in the casket, and I'm just sitting there going, am I hearing this correctly? Am I making it up? You know, I could be making it up. No, I'm not making it up. It was a gentleman in the rural area by the farm that wanted to possibly purchase the farm, and my brother was saying, well, if I get $3 million for the farm, you know, then I'll sell it to you. And I just went, whoa, more talk about money, more talk. Also, one other thing I wanted to say, back, when my dad was on the farm, or was going to be on the farm, it didn't work out, my brother had told me that I will never see my father once he's on the farm. Yeah, unless my father wants to see you. But my dad was so out of it that he would never decide, and he would be manipulated, not even into seeing me. So I had to call the OPP and tell them this story. And the OPP asked me, is that your brother's farm? Is it registered in his name? And I said, no, it's my father's farm. My dad's not, like, it's my dad's farm. And the OPP said, well, in that case, then we will escort you out there to see your father, because you have every right to see your dad. I just thought I'd put that in there as well. So anyway, going back to the funeral. And then when my nieces and nephews wanted to come up and see me at the funeral, my mother-in-law, or the mother-in-law, the wife's mother, would slowly come up to the kids and walk them back to their side of the funeral home. And they wanted to see their aunt. Yeah. Anyway. So, while the funeral was ending, my dad's casket was going to be closing. Second day. My brother, power of attorney, trustee, instructed me and my mom very nicely to please leave before the casket closes, which my mother found quite painful. And
it's 8 o'clock.
I called my brother a name out loud because of his wanting me and my mom to leave before my dad's casket closing. I figured he wanted to pull stuff out of the casket that we put in for Dad. I'm pretty sure, you know. But it didn't happen. My mom stood up and said, no, I want to see Dad's casket closed. So that didn't work. And then at the end of the funeral, when it was all over, my mom wanted some flowers because there was 1,000,001 flowers all around Dad's casket. And my mom wanted a particular flower that her godparents, because when you're Roman Catholic, you know, you have godparents and all that. And they sent it up from Leamington to the funeral home. And my mom just wanted to have that flower. And my sister-in-law said, well, you can't have it. You just can't have it. And my mom said, but that's from my godparents. I really want it. And then she goes, okay, have it. Like that. Oh, yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very nice person in our family. And so that happened. Then when the plot was done in the in the cemetery, St. Peter's Cemetery here in London, when the plot was done for my father, my mom had mentioned to me that she wants my name on the monument as well. So we have a big family plot. Well, it turns out that I guess my brother and his wife didn't want that and used my dad's money for the cemetery plot to exclude the daughter. So I had to pay $17,000 so that I could build a monument right next to my family monument with a white arrow going across showing daughter of Lana and Arpad Horvath. How sad. The abuse I've endured. So that happened. And then after all of that, when he was buried, I went to the OPP on Wellington Road. I explained to them all my suspicions, what I feel, what happened here. Of which, I guess maybe they looked into it or not, I don't know. But never did get back to me. Nothing really did happen, I don't think. Then, 2 years later, when all this happens, and I tried very hard to do what I could, the London police obviously knock on our door saying there's a murder. At that point, I was really nervous, hugely nervous, and I thought, holy crap, everything I was thinking could have come true. It was all about the money. So, right off the bat, I went to the London Police Department because they had to question me about WEttlaufer's murder, and did I see the nursing people, did I talk with them, so forth and so on. And it turns out, no, I didn't talk with them at all, but I informed them left and right about how my sister-in-law, my brother, and everything that was going on here. Like, it was, like, really suspicious, in my opinion, to treat us the way we did and block us out. And everything is about money, by the way I've seen it, heard it, watched it. So anyway, I hired a private detective on my dime. He came out to my camper trailer. I think it was in 2015. He tried to investigate everything, and it turns out that through his investigation at that time, he was looking for fraud. We were investigating for fraud. We weren't investigating for anything else, just fraud, because this is 2015, not 2016 when we heard about the murder. So anyway, 2015, so yeah, so that's what happened. So he investigated my brother at the time and said he did not feel there's any fraud, but he found it very, very suspicious and interesting why there was 3 wills written up. And inside those wills and competency reports, there is one page that my father did write that said if his son were to get hold of his bank accounts, he would steal his money. That's written down. The other thing that is very interesting that was written down by the competency doctor, I guess, and whoever wrote the report, was that this report can be challenged because Mr. Horvath had dementia and was under no condition whatsoever to write a will. Not at all, because my brother was the one answering all the financial questions and all the banking and all that for my dad at the time. So, I'm sure those wills will be investigated in the future. So, I've said everything while my glucose is going down because I'm a hypoglycemic, so I have to go have my snack and eat again. This is very stressful for me. I'm glad I didn't freak out. In the beginning, I thought I was going to drop. I made it. I said everything that I can think of, which is sad, which is also recorded, which is also documented, which is also put away. Not in my home, and somebody else is well aware of all these documents. They know where to go and where to get it, and they know the situation going on that was written. So you make your own opinions up, guys, listening, watching. I am a murder victim, and I do believe I was abused by the way I was treated by my sister-in-law and by my brother. I will never forgive them for that. And on top of everything, now we have a play in Blyth, which started yesterday, called In the Wake of WEttlaufer. Gil Garrett, the director. And guess who's involved in the play? My brother. Scripting it, acting, I don't really know. I don't really give a shit. Because it's nothing new. There's money involved. He thinks he's going to be an actor in Hollywood. I found his YouTube up online. It says he wants to be an actor in Hollywood and whatever. And then on top of it, I found my brother's Facebook. Arpad Andrew Horvath. And on the Facebook, it says, shortly after my dad died, that he's the owner currently of my father's business, Central Tool and Die. That's impossible. My brother was never the owner, and it was sold in 2016, I believe. 2016 or 2015, it was sold. How can you be an owner of a business when it's, anyway. And then on the Facebook, it also says that he is the president of the Liquor Control Board Association. Okay. So, I don't know what's going on. I mean, I know what's going on. I don't know what's going on with him, his head. I know I don't trust my sister-in-law. I never did. My father never did. I know when my father was in the hospital, in Victoria Hospital, he put his hand over my hand and he apologized. When I was growing up as a little girl, he'd give me, always discipline me for this, that, and the other little stuff. And he offered his apology before he went into deep dementia. And he put his hand over my hand. And I took a picture of that because I thought that would never happen in my life. My dad was not an emotionally loving, kind of showing, kind of emotional man. But he said to me one thing which I will never forget. And that is that he apologized and said, but your brother and his wife possibly are going to screw me over. And I'm not lying, this is a true story. I could be put under the lie detector test, whatever you want, it'll come out that this happened. So, after that, he really sunk into the dementia. It was game over from there into Meadowpark. And anyway, my sugar is so down, I don't even want to pass, I have to go eat. I'm going to pass out I have hypoglycemia, it's no good. So, this is my YouTube. 59 minutes, 1 hour. This is what I've experienced, and this is the truth. I'm not holding anything back. I may not remember even more details that I just don't remember, but yeah, it's not good. So I did this to show you how a murder victim can suffer when you have the wrong power of attorneys, and how they can abuse. Oops. Bye for now.